Hi again folks, how you all doing? Here we have an Oxford Rail Dean Goods locomotive that was sent to me by Piers. He said he bought this second hand a few years ago and it's been a good runner, although he says it seemed to be geared very low. He decided the locomotive needed a service and managed to take it apart enough to give it a light service, and it ran fine. But after a few laps of his layout it suddenly stopped dead. Piers has been unable to determine what's wrong with it and contacted me to ask if I'd take a look at it. Well, let's turn on the power and see what happens. Oh, there's a wee bit of movement there. Yeah, there's life, but the diameter is maxing out, so it's shorting. So we'll shove it into the shed and we'll see what's up. Righto then, an Oxford Rail Dean Goods. I do like an 060 tender locomotive. This wouldn't really belong in my layout, but yeah, it's very nice. Let's get a look at it. All seems to be in pretty good condition. Piers got this second hand and he said he has been into it, and he told me that the front coupling appeared to have been glued on and the body fixing screw is underneath it. And what he's done is melted a hole through it, just let you see. So you can see the front coupling there. Piers has melted a hole to get at the body fixing screw because he couldn't remove it. I don't think it's been glued. I think it's just been bashed in. Sometimes they can be very tight fitting, these NEM pockets, and sometimes they can be very loose. So maybe it has been glued. Don't know, but I don't see any evidence of glue there. But that little hole will allow me to get at that screw, so that's fine. There's a screw missing there, and there's another screw missing on the tender, but they're in the box, so that's okay. The two rear body fixing screws are directly under the holders for the brake rods that are attached to the underframe. And just looking at the pickups, yeah, that one needs attention, so does that one. We'll need to get this off and have a look at it. But the problem with this, it just suddenly stopping, and the fact that it's shorting, either an electrical component is blown, I would think, or the motor's blown. That's kind of what I'm guessing. And because this is an Oxford Rail locomotive, getting a replacement motor, yeah, we may have a problem. But we'll see. We'll open it up and find out what's wrong. Get it into the sponge. We'll detach the tender. Unplug it. Unscrew that. Get that out the rod. Now, can I get at these screws? Might just be able to without taking the keeper plate off. That one's very loose, so that one's going to come out okay. Yeah, we can just get at them. Let's see if I can get that NEM pocket out. Or is it really that tight in? Oh geez, yeah, that's tight. And I think we've got some pipes attached. Need to watch out for. There we go. Alright, so all the DCC hoogie madoogery must be in the tender. The wires have all been mangled up in there. So I think what we want to do is get the motor out and test it. Because if the motor's okay, then we need to look into where the problem is. You know, if this had shorted immediately after Piers put it back together, then, you know, you've got to suspect a pinched wire or, you know, just something causing a short circuit physically. But if it runs and then suddenly stops, it kind of does sound like something has failed and the main suspect is the motor, but maybe not. So the screws out, it's the mounts. Okay, motor and light come out like that. DCC is not connected, so we can apply power directly to the motor and see if it goes. Yeah, the motor is spinning. Current draw. Okay. That's good news. What could have been causing the short? Right, okay. I think we have to have a wee look in the tender. Right, there's a lot of, that's probably little fuses on the socket. Don't think that would cause a short though. If one of them had blown, it just wouldn't run at all. But the fact that it's shorting, I don't think that's the problem. I think we'll fix this motor back in place to stop it wobbling about, and then we'll get the underframe off. Maybe it's a pickup issue. Right, let's undo these screws and get this underframe or keeper plate out the road. Let's see what's going on. Why is this not coming out? There. Alright, so the two pickups make contact with these contacts there, which is not a good design because they could come in contact with the chassis and they would short each other out. So maybe that's the problem. See these little contacts here that make contact with the pickups, they're just loose. And it looks like they could very easily both end up touching the chassis, which would end up causing a short circuit. That just doesn't look right to me. I think I might put a little bit of heat shrink insulation down in there. I mean, they'll be attached to this little PCB that the motor wires and the wires to the tender make contact with. But they're not fixed to it by the looks of things. Right, if I lift these out, and we'll give them, they're all oily as well, really shouldn't be. So we'll give them a scoosh. Just degrease them. And have I got some insulation that will go down in there? That goes in okay. Does it accept these okay? Yeah. Okay, how deep do we need to go? So a wee bit of heat shrink insulation into the hole there. Put that in there. So these little contacts are now insulated from the chassis with a little bit of heat shrink. So hopefully that's solved the problem. Plug that in. See if this goes. Nope, it's still shorting. We'll get the rolling rod. Turn on the power. And then it, oh, hang on, this is interesting. Is that happening because I'm moving the chassis or touching the motor. Right, so that's shorting. Hang on a minute, I'll tell you what I'm going to try. I'm going to lift this motor off again, because when I twisted the motor it ran, but that was maybe just moving the chassis, but maybe it's the negative contact on the motor is touching the chassis. Right, so that's still shorting, so it's not that. So the problem has to be I think we've got a dodgy terminal on the motor. It's like this wire's broken, but I don't understand why that would cause it to short. I think we'll desolder these wires and we'll test the motor completely separately. Right, okay. That seems fine. So I'm actually suspecting this wire. I don't quite understand why that would cause a short circuit. Oh, it's going to be fun replacing that. There's a tiny little contact on that PCB. So that terminal that I've got to desolder and then solder the new wire to is absolutely tiny. Actually, I'm just wondering if it was just a bad solder joint on the terminal. I think we'll try that before I desolder that. Could be giving myself a lot of work there that I don't need to do. Let's try soldering these wires back on, but we'll cut the end of that off because it is a bit chewed up. And we'll just do a fresh solder on it because it was maybe just a bad solder joint. Okay. Right, okay, that's the wire soldered back on. Right, the motor's disengaged, but we'll see if it spins. Helps if you connect the rolling rod up, doesn't it? See if this motor spins. Yes, it does. I think that's all the problem was a bad solder joint on the motor. I'm glad I thought of that before I desoldered that wire and tried to resolder it onto that tiny little contact, because that would have been fun and games. It's why sometimes it might appear when I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with the model. You might think, well, clearly the motor's failed, just replace the motor. I always like to go through a kind of a process of elimination. I've just worked on a model that clearly had a motor problem, but I still went through, try it with this, try it with that, just in case. It's a nice model, you'll see it soon. But yeah, I tend to try and be quite methodical because you don't want to end up taking things apart when you don't need to, and especially desoldering things when you don't need to. So even though I thought that was just a dodgy wire, just goes to show it wasn't. It was the solder joint. I still don't understand why it was shorting, but never mind. Okay, we will just check this on the test track. Right, is this going to run? Yes. Right, okay, so a bad solder joint. It's not what I would have guessed, but there you go. An easy fix at the end of the day. I'm going to get some lunch, take the dogs out, and I'll get this back together and we'll get it onto the layout. Right, okay, lunch had, dogs walked. Nice and warm out there just now. Right, okay, we'll get this back together. Do these wheels need a clean? They kind of look like they do. I think a lot of the plating's just come off actually. It makes them look dirty, but they're actually not bad. Screws in there. Now we've got a couple of screws missing. One from the tender, and one from here, but I think they're in the box. Another detailed part there. I have to be extremely careful when I open models that are sent to me, because in the post they get sugared about so much. Quite often things come off, little detail parts and stuff, and it's not unusual to open a model up and things drop out, so I'm always very careful. I never just open it up in a sort of random place. I usually open it up here at my workbench, and just so if anything does fall out, I see it straight away. I lost, if you remember, the little OOBill tank locomotive I worked on a wee while ago. The chimney top, the copper chimney top, must have fallen off, and I never noticed it. Just took the model out of the box and put it down, and I thought, oh, the chimney top's not there, and I couldn't find it for love nor money. Fortunately, a Curascale had a spare, so I ordered that up. But yeah, you have to be very, very careful, because in the post things fall off. Here we've got a couple of screws, and there's a detail part there. I don't know if that's come off the locomotive or the tender. We'll have a look. There we go. Right, that's us done. I'll give it a wee test on the test track. Right, okay. It's geared quite slow, but it's not that bad. Turn the power up, it goes at a fair speed. Right, that's this little Oxford Rail Dean Good sorted. All it was a dodgy solder joint on the motor. I wouldn't have guessed that. Okay, we'll pull it out of the shed. Okay then, out it comes. So there we are, that's Piers Dean Goods running again. Bit of an odd one that, a bad solder joint on the positive motor terminal. I still can't quite figure out why that was causing it to short circuit, but yeah, I just resoldered the wire and problem solved. Glad I thought to do that and didn't desolder the wire from the PCB first, as that would have been a tricky one to resolder. Memories of Stephenson's rocket. Nice model this, as the Oxford Real models tend to be, although they often have their wee issues. But I think this should be fine now. Okay folks, I shall get it packed up and sent back to Piers, and we shall see what's next. Catch yous later.